And we're back. Thank you so much, Matthias, for your insight. I think we're going to break down and revisit these tensions that you mentioned in a minute, but I'm not going to do that on my own. Actually, I've got a great lineup of panelists to discuss everything cloud sovereignty, everything or almost. I've got another Matthias Ecke, a German European Parliament member from the S&D group. We've got Anne Dubosc, the Director for Public Affairs at OVH Cloud. Then we have Maike Okano-Heymans, the Program Lead for Geopolitics and of Technology and Digitalization at the Kligendal Institute. And then on the far end, we've got Guido Lobrano, the Senior Vice President of Policy and Director General for Europe at the lobby group, the Information Technology Industry Council, ITI. Thank you so much for joining for this conversation. And I wanted actually to start with you because I think we need also like to address the basics underpinning this conversation. So I'm actually curious, and I'm going to ask you to keep it short, but what does cloud sovereignty mean to you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Just maybe to start briefly, I don't know if all of you know OVH Cloud. OVH Cloud, who we are in 3 words. First, we are a cloud provider, an EU cloud provider. Second point, we are a global cloud provider. We are addressing any market in the 5 continents. And third, we are an industrial player. We have our own data center, and we are building our own server, which means that we are very across the full value chain of the cloud. Cloud sovereignty is a very, very good question. If I'm starting by sovereignty, what does it mean? It means that any kind of user should be able to choose. This is a freedom of choice. In the cloud, it's really important. It means that you can keep the control. Keep the control over the data you store in the cloud, and keep the control on the services, because right now, and we shouldn't forget that, AI, but any kind of new digital service is relying on the cloud technology. So this is how we do define cloud sovereignty. And to be more concrete on that, what does it mean as a cloud provider? First, we need to ensure that the data are under the hand of the user. It means that we need to provide with cyber protection for the data. That's key. But we also need to provide security against any kind of access to the data, especially in the current world where we do have access coming from outside of the EU. Second point, we need tech independency. There is a key topic in the cloud sector, which is how can be sure as a cloud user that I can at some point change from one provider to another one. And it's not always the case. And the last one that is key right now in the current context is how to mitigate the risk of shutdown. We want to be sure right now, as a user, as a citizen, as a company, as a public organization, that our services couldn't be tomorrow be cut like this without any possibility to do anything. So this is, for us, cloud sovereignty.
And we're going to explore that nuclear scenario in a minute, but before I wanted to turn to Guido, like, do you see eye to eye with Anne on what cloud sovereignty mean?
I think, the discussion on sovereignty has evolved a lot, and the element of choice and diversification certainly is central. For me, sovereignty means the ability to leverage best-in-class, reliable, and secure technology. So it also has a lot to do with the competitiveness of your ecosystem, the fact that you actually can deploy, find, and grow these technology providers, find them in Europe. It certainly starts from the customer, right? The customer wants to have reliable partners and cloud services, and competitive ones as well. So all these, again, point to a number of things. First of all, I think competitiveness is really a prerequisite for effective sovereignty. And if you look back at the Draghi report, one of, I think, the fundamental points was we need to leverage AI in Europe more to be more competitive. And so when we look at that in the context of sovereignty, it's interesting because one of the key foundational technologies for AI is cloud. So it's important that we don't enact policies that inadvertently reduce the possibility of accessing cloud, because otherwise we would be affecting the goal of fostering AI and therefore being competitive.
Matthias, so today US tech giants, not to name them, dominate the cloud markets. I was going to ask you, why is that such a problem for Europe?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation and also that we discussed this. You probably all know some US tech giants, and otherwise you just maybe go in front of the room and you see that some partners that making this happen could also be called US tech giants, which I think reflects on the fact that we are very used to all the services from big tech giants. They, of course, people are used to them. They have a quite high quality and usability, so they are chosen for a reason. On the other hand, we have seen more and more a monopolistic behavior of some of the tech giants that we try to counter with measures like the Digital Markets Act, because we want interoperability, we want the freedom of choice in terms of your tech devices and also your tech services. And we also have growing concerns about data security, about the risk, like potential risk of a partial or complete shut-off or of increasing costs that are not based maybe on contractual relations. So we've seen that the new US government has kind of weaponized its access to the biggest tech companies, and this all makes us a bit insecure. So we started from the very idea that we need a more competitive system, a system that prevents monopolization, and now we also have more of a security perspective.
Are we a digital colony, like Christina Kfara said earlier on this very stage? What do you think? Are we?
Well, she's always very good at putting things very bluntly, but we are at least very dependent on services, on goods and digital goods, on infrastructure. We import a lot, so we are, of course, dependent on the decisions that are made elsewhere. So yes, in a way we are.
Micah, these conversations aren't really new, like the risk of the potential risk of data access by the US in particular, like this new, maybe like the new shutdown risk is somehow a new argument here. But why is it suddenly back on Brussels' agenda, and why cloud in particular?
Yeah. Well, I would challenge the back on the agenda. Like, I wonder if it was ever on the agenda, in all fairness. And I come from the Netherlands, so we let the market do its job, and we thought that would be, a happily ever after. But we're now finding out that, okay, maybe the market does not solve all our issues. So in the Netherlands, indeed, as we have digitalized very rapidly, far more than faster than some other EU member states, and we have come to rely on just a few providers, that is making for another problem of a lack of diversification, right? If the nuclear option wouldn't be a nuclear option if we had a diversification of providers, but we all ended up going for the extremely competitive offers that offer their services in the ways that clients like it, are used to, and also then, we go not just for cloud services, but also for our software, and next might be AI, to all of the same providers. And I think the awareness of that not being a good thing is finally dawning up on us. So, and just because the Netherlands is one of the first front runners in digitalization and one of the front runners in having sort of accepted all these digital risks that come with the lack of diversification, we are now also in the EU calling for, I think, more action. And I can tell you that many people have been surprised of this voice coming from the Netherlands. But I hope that this is all the more reason to take it serious, because if the Netherlands is becoming like France, something must be really happening, right? And cloud sovereignty is not the same for all of us. I think we need to remember that as well.
That's one of the key issues, and that's why also it's really hard to settle on what to do about it and how do we get there, because if we can't define what cloud sovereignty underpins, that's.
And perhaps a final point, if I may, because I think for Baltic states, cloud sovereignty may also be about not having all your data in your country, but having it securely stored elsewhere as well. That's very different from some other member states. But the other point is also, let's focus on what's most important, right? I'm not talking about taking everything that is now in the cloud with American providers that are doing, having great offerings, taking them elsewhere. That's not on the table. We need to focus on the data that need the highest level of security first. That's a huge job already, and this is where governments have a role to play, where they can leverage, for example, government procurement, to make the changes in the market that over time, hopefully, will make a difference more broadly.
The new risk, and the new risk we're discussing is the risk of a shutdown, a partial shutdown. You've said that, Matthias, you've just said that. Your CEO was in town recently to also warn about this. So you work in cloud. I'd like you maybe to give us a sense of how this would actually translate into, and also most importantly, and I think that's something we discussed also a little bit on this stage also earlier, how credible of a threat that is.
Actually, I think we need to go back to the current situation you just mentioned. Currently, the cloud market is dominated at 72% approximately by US players. It means that 3 big players does have the market. So to be concrete, if I'm taking any kind of example coming from a private or a public organization that is using cloud services, there is, I think, many chances to have a company that is working only with one provider. I think the main topic is here. The issue is not to say we should migrate everything from a US player to a EU player. The thing is that not to put all the egg on the same place. We need to be able to have different kind of provider, and this is why we do believe that the solution is pretty easy. It's called multi-cloud. Okay, it's a little bit technical, but it means that at some point you can have different kind of services that can run all together, and at the end, if at some point for any kind of reason, it can be a political reason, but it can be also a technical problem coming from one provider, you are sure that the other services are going to continue to work, and it's necessary, especially in absolutely key and strategic sector, and this is what we are talking about right now. And this dependency on only 3 main players dominating the market, considering the fact that we do have EU alternative, is a strong issue. And I think that at the end, the topic right now is to make the right decision, to take the responsibility, and not only as a tech leader in the company, but also as a CEO, to have a look on where are the data, which data I do have, which provider I'm working with, and how to mitigate this risk of shutdown by having different kind of provider. And once again, the idea is not to say, I don't want to work anymore with a non-EU player. It's not the point at all, but to be able to work with different kind of provider. Then I don't think that I really can to measure the risk. We never know. In the current situation, I think that the uncertainty of the geopolitical context, nobody can have like a view of what can happen in 2 days, in 3 weeks, or in 3 months. So this is not something I'm able to comment, but what I'm sure of it is there is a momentum right now. There is now a point where we do have at CEO level people able to speak about geopolitical risk and technical risk, starting with the cloud sector, and so they can take the decision taking that into account.
Guido, what do you make of that new risk being floating around? Is Trump or any US president really like sitting on a kill switch?
Look, I think when we talk about the sovereignty question and how we define it, we need to go back to the concerns that we're trying to address, right? And there's a number of them have come up. Are we trying to address concerns related to access to critical data? Is it about securing supply chains? Is it about fears of discontinuity of service, which so far we haven't seen?
But even Brad Smith was in town recently to acknowledge that there was a real concern in Europe, and he even promised new measures to try and alleviate those concerns.
I think it's absolutely understandable.
So what does it say also about this risk? Is there a real the fact that the tech CEO would come to town?
I think it says a lot about the concerns that people have, and these companies are making very serious commitments to address these concerns, with investing in data centers to have more localized data, contractual commitments, partnerships with local providers. All of these are very powerful and significant commitments that are trying to address the concerns, regardless of whether they are realistic or not. I think this is not a question that we are going to be able to respond to. but it goes back to again, the original goals. And so when you think about sovereignty, there's a lot of different versions of it. I think largely we're speaking about an objective of addressing industrial policy and economic security concerns with securing supply chains and making sure that your tech ecosystem is shielded from external shocks. And on the other hand, there's a broader objective of security overall. And again, it's about accessing data, etc. And these things call for different solutions. And cloud is at the center of a lot of these. And sometimes the ideas that we see do not seem to actually address specifically the concerns. It's about the services you want to have, and not about. It shouldn't be about the services some people do not want to have in Europe.
Matthias, so regardless of the level of risk, what can Europe realistically do about it? Because I think so we can argue about what cloud sovereignty means, but we can also argue about, so where do we draw the line? How far do we go? Because some people say also, like, if we really want to sideline, let's say, US players, it's also like we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, we should start from where we are. We should have a very clear look on the assets that we have here in Europe, the players that can provide these services that are secure, services that comply with our ideas and values of privacy, of data protection, interoperability. And then we see, can we scale up? Can we support them in scaling up? I agree that we should not have the perspective of whom to sideline, because this is not feasible. And it's also not what I would wish for. Rather, we should create more diversity. We should create more security, and of course, beyond the development of our own. Like Eurostack, that's what the term is often called, and cloud is part of that. Beyond our own digital public and private infrastructure in Europe, we also should focus on enforcing the regulation that we have, and maybe to develop it further. I'm not really.
We past that? Aren't we past just enforcing the regulation we have? Some people say that, even Christina Cafaro again. I'm sorry, I have to quote her again, but she said it's only one pillar, right? We also need to.
It is one. It is not sufficient. Yeah. This is. I completely agree with that. But we have now a discussion where it says, we are only innovative in regulation. We have created a lot of regulation, and we are not creating growth. We are not creating chances for AI to develop, but only regulation. I think this is not the proper perspective. Regulation is needed to protect. Our values is needed to protect competition in the market, and there was an intensive debate about the AI Act, for example, and the last Monday, and then we found a compromise, bearing in mind that given the technological development, we might have to touch upon it again and maybe to amend it at some point. But I think that we should not have this fails dichotomy of should we have regulation or should we have growth and innovation? I think smart regulation can support growth and innovation in Europe.
Mike, what concrete options does Europe now have to address this problem?
Yeah, I think responding to what was just said, I think we need to go beyond regulation, in all honesty. This is a market failure, and so we need to invest heavily in market restructuring, and that goes beyond regulation. It enters into competition or antitrust policies. So we need to be thinking more in that direction, I believe. Also for new companies, for new real alternatives, because you said there are European alternatives. I think there's actually chunks of European alternatives in what ultimately ends up being what we call cloud services, right? That's what the hyperscalers do. They actually group together a lot of services from data storage to cybersecurity and many things in between. That's the European company. There's no one company offering that. So whether you organize that as one sort of European megascaler, as we have with colleagues, I wrote a piece on maybe we should try and build a European megascaler. Obviously, that gets a lot of response and people saying, well, no, that's creating a monster of the hyperscaler. similar to that we don't want, so let's try to create a federated solution. Well, if that's the case, yes, let's try and do that, but let's make sure that there is a European alternative that does put all these different elements of what we call cloud service in one sort of all together, so that if a smaller company also needs cloud services, it has just one place to go to rather than 5 different companies to call. And that's the sort of thing that I think we need to be supporting, that governments can support by, for example, saying, well, if there is something like that and there is a good European choice, we'll actually buy that rather than buying American solutions, which is what we are doing now.
Matthias, you seem to be having strong feelings maybe about mega scalers. I saw you.
No, I think that we should not just rebuild a European hyperscaler. Yeah, I think that's what we also said. I even don't know if it's feasible, because it would probably mean that you are number one in a market that is already very crowded, and that would probably not solve our diversification problem. So I'm more in favor of the federated, decentralized options, and also which in some tech stack areas also means that we can have open source systems instead of proprietary systems. But if we frame the problem in a way that we should have like a European Google or European Amazon, or I think that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think it.
Market demand is exactly for something that is a all-in-one solution, then we have to take that serious, right? If you want to come up with something that really the market is going to accept and buy.
Yeah, but you said there's a market failure. I actually disagree with that. I don't see the market failure. And I used to be a competition lawyer. You do not have a market failure just because you do not have the amount of players of a certain nationality that you would want to see. That is not a market failure. It may be a valid concern, but it is not a competition policy concern. It shouldn't be. That would be wrong. And regulation is addressing potential, I think, market and competition concerns. When you look at potential regulation for cloud, I think it's interesting what we're seeing recently with the Cloud and AI Development Act. And if we want to talk a little bit about it, I think it would be interesting. And the way I see it is, there's a bright side and there's a bit of a dark side in there with the ideas. On the one hand, it's very positive, the goal of tripling Europe's cloud capacity in the next few years. And as I said, this is an important goal to achieve and to leverage AI for competitiveness. At the same time, there are points about developing sovereign criteria for highly critical services and infrastructure. And again, I think we risk having a bit of a bipolar approach where, on the other hand, we are reducing choice and opportunities for customers to find the services that they want.
Another avenue that is actually also in the Eurostack initiative that we mentioned, and one I think you've been also calling for some time at OVH, is also leveraging public procurement. Would you like to speak to that and why this is, you think, a good option to explore?
Yes, and to go beyond this question, I think that there is first the question of the offer. We need, as provider, to develop and to continue to invest to have the product the market is waiting for. And just so you know, and I don't think that a lot of people know it, as OVH Cloud, we do have 80% of the needs of the market currently available in our portfolio. And if we don't have it, we can be able to create partnership with other people from the ecosystem, other players of the ecosystem to develop the right offer. If I'm taking the example of the Luxembourg, for instance, Luxembourg wanted to have a sovereign cloud available in the market, so they decided to come to see us. The Post Luxembourg came to see us, and we developed all together with the local player in Luxembourg and with us, OVH Cloud, an offer that is going to be the sovereign cloud in Luxembourg. So this is a very good example of what can be done at the ecosystem level. So this is a responsibility of the cloud provider, and for sure, and I will come back to that just after, we need the demand to create the product. At some point, it's really good to invest, but at some point, if we don't have the guarantee to have people to build, to buy and to come to use the product, there is no point to develop them.
But then I'm sure, Guido, we would say that the demand is actually today going to those hyperscalers.
Yeah, but this is the second point. So I think there is a responsibility of the client, of the customer, to take the risk to work with maybe providers they don't know yet, like us, like Aruba in Italy, like Ionos in Germany, like other players existing on the market that they are not that known, but they do have the product they will need. And if you're coming to see us today, I'm sure that we are pretty different to where we were 2 years ago. This is the magic of the cloud sector, of the digital sector. So there is, I think, right now a responsibility of the customer to be able to go to see what is available on the market without taking the easy solution of the hyperscalers that were in the market with, I'm not agree with you, unfair commercial practices that were also preventing companies like us to enter properly the market. So there are unfair practices in the market right now, and I'm not the only one telling that. You can go to see many competition authorities in the world, 8 of them I've written reports saying that we do have an issue regarding competition in the cloud market. It's true. It's true in France, in the Netherlands, in Japan, in Spain, in many countries. So this is something everybody knows. And third point, there is a responsibility of the policymaker. For sure, we need to do things, and it's not only about regulation. It's about public initiative. Where do we want to go when it comes to allocate public funding at some point? If tomorrow we want to develop AI champion at EU level, should we then consider that they should rely on cloud provider coming from the EU value chain, for instance? So this is the kind of question we ask with a really global approach to create value in the entire value chain. So at the end, we need to have a common response from a user perspective, from provider perspective, and from policymaker perspective to be sure that we're going to change the situation.
I want to give you a chance to respond to...
So the Data Act, which is yet to be implemented, is exactly addressing those potential points about, it has provisions on cloud switching, on bundling, that are very relevant to, those situations. So there is a regulation yet to be implemented that is going to cover that. And, I'm a little bit concerned that you actually see some very similar ideas again in the Cloud AI Development Act. I think, we should learn from the past and not reiterate and repeat different regulations and lay them over just because something has not been implemented. We've seen that in the past 5 years. And now, through the simplification agenda, hopefully, which we really appreciate, hopefully we're going to be able to address that and to have a competitive regulatory framework that is simpler and allows also European companies to thrive.
Matthias, on this idea of leveraging public procurement, what do you think about it? This Buy European Act, that's something we've discussed for some time. Is it going to take off soon, you think, now?
Well, my idea is that it was probably never as close as now in terms of taking off, because even for me, I was always very skeptical, but now it seems that we see more and more global players, we see more and more economic blocks in the world that in some sectors do not adhere to the WTO standards. And so I think that we should preserve the multilateral trade order, of course. But we have the chance to take some retaliatory measures to when other countries do not apply WTO standards, and this is taken somehow now and has been taken in the future. So what I would prefer is not to base any kind of procurement on pure denomination, but on standards, on data protection, privacy, and that we can be sure that we will be not taken hostage by foreign government authorities. So this is, and that could imply that you are based in the EU. But let me just add one more point on the procurement aspect, because we should bear in mind that more demand for European products in the moment probably means that procurement becomes more expensive. So we also should not mystify procurement, because we have stretched public budgets. We discuss a lot of investment needs, and we, in the same time, have to think about sustainable public budgets. We think about the tax bases and so on. So it will not be done with just creating the possibility of procuring as a government, because government need to be able to also financially wise.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah, that's a fair point you're raising. I was going to ask you also, whatever we do to tackle like these dependency on US cloud, is there a risk that whatever we do, that the trade war, the risk, the fears of retaliation get in the way also, and that becomes also like a bargaining chip?
Yeah, it's kind of a vicious circle, because some of these measures, we just use them, or we just prepare them, because we cannot fully rely on our American partners anymore, which is, I think, obvious for everyone who's seen like some of the footage from the White House. So on the other hand, every policy decision taken that affects American companies or American government now is conceived by some of our American partners as part of a trade war retaliation effect. So I think that we should try to really be cool and separate things from another. There are sector-based policies that apply to everyone, wherever the a company is based. For example, the DMA also, of course, applies to gatekeepers based in the EU. But in the same time, the Commission, especially who is leading the talks with the Americans in negotiation, of course, they try to be a bit cautious and not put all their cards on the table in the first moment. But we should not be scared and threatened by any possible retaliation in designing our own policies.
Mm-hmm. We're almost coming to an end, but I also wanted to address AI, of course, which is like the topic of the year. And I wanted to ask you, Anne, also like given your expertise, how much does our dependence on US cloud could potentially turn into a dependence on US AI tomorrow?
I think we had this debate probably during the summit on AI that was organized in Paris in February. But what I've seen during this summit is that we were only focused on training AI. And I think we missed a part of the debate, because AI is not only about LLM, it's not about ChatGPT, it's not about big model to be trained in big data center. We shouldn't forget that AI is much broader, that AI is existing since a long time ago, and right now we also need to be able to answer the needs in terms of AI from different kind of companies, from different kind of organization. So I do believe that right now EU can still be in the race of AI, with a part that is going to be big data center, but in that case, my comment would be to be able to develop data centers that are responsible, because it can be an interesting difference coming from the EU with a much more responsible data center from an environmental point of view, which is going to be a key topic, and also other kind of services and data center, like what we are doing, for instance, at OVH Cloud, that can also respond to other needs in AI. For instance, if I'm taking the example of machine learning, it's existing for a long time ago, and this is definitely something that can be done without the big GPUs that are very expensive, that needs a lot of energy. So we need to balance once again and to remember what does it mean AI, plenty of solution, plenty of needs, and in that case, for sure, the EU can still be in the race and already have interesting player in the cloud and in the AI sector.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I would have liked to address many other topics, but that will be it for now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One thing is clear from our chat, that Europe has some tough choices ahead if it wants to break free from its cloud dependency. The cloud is ticking. The sense of urgency is here now. But let's see what we do about it and how do we take it from here. We're also close to the end of our AI and Tech Summit, but please stay in the room or online. I will also, because I will be joined in a minute by my colleagues, so we can all together unpack all the takeaways from to yesterday and today. And then we have another special moment right after, because we'll be hosting also EU Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation, Ekaterina Zarayeva. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.